Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for tonight's episode of The Conversation. I appreciate the support. One of the things that I wanted to do with the show was to showcase and highlight individuals that are doing positive things within the community, whether it be community activism, starting community-based programs geared toward youth and basically the underserved population. So tonight, this gentleman I have sitting here next to me is heavily involved in all of that. If you've been rocking with me and Made for Kings for a while, you know who he is. Some know him as Roll, the Big Loco. My man Roland Knight is here with us tonight to talk about his involvement in community-based programs and actually what he does. So I'm actually just, again, so people don't think that I'm just dragging anybody off the street to sit down in here and talk. And just because I know this brother, I'm going to give you some of his stats, a little bit of his resume. So my man Roland Knight is the Senior Program Director of a Cornerstone Program in Brooklyn. The program oversees after-school activities for elementary participants, middle school and high school students during the evening hours and on Saturdays. Something I'm actually very proud of him to have done this. He was the keynote speaker for South Brooklyn Community High School's graduation this year, right?
This year.
He also received the 40 Under 40 Award from NYN Media for outstanding service and leadership in the nonprofit community. He has over 17 years of dedicated work in various parts of New York City and the New York metropolitan area, serving many underserved communities. So who better to have the conversation with than this gentleman, Mr. Knight, who, as you can see, is heavily involved and been heavily involved in community-based activities and actions. So first off, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time and, you know, sitting down and wearing a different hat because we know Roll, the Big Loco, as an artist, but we want to get to know Roland Knight. Yeah. And it's always good, I think, to give people a different perspective on who you are.
Almost definitely.
So, again, thank you for being here tonight. So first off, what I want to ask you is, when did you first get involved with community programs, and how did you get involved?
Wow. That's a great question. So, you know, as a child, I grew up in Rug Projects. For those who don't know, Rug is the largest NYCHA facility, a housing authority rather, in Brooklyn.
And not to cut you off, for those who don't know, what is NYCHA?
Oh, New York City Housing Authority.
Okay.
So we're the largest in Brooklyn. Okay. Only NYCHA development larger is Queensbridge, and that's as a collective, right? Because there's two sides to Rug. We have Rug East and we have Rug West. Okay. So I grew up in Rug West. We call that the backyard. Trip Towers for my newer generation, or younger generation rather, or my generation, older is the backyard, backyardigans, right?
Okay.
So with that being said, I grew up in Rug, and coming on that block, which we call the back, Trip Towers, we had a school that was right there, which was PS15. And at that particular school, everyone that lived in that proximity went to that school. But then we also had a beacon program there. And that happened in the early 90s, where Good Shepherd Services, the organization I currently work for, was able to ascertain a contract to have a beacon program there. And I went there as a kid.
Okay.
And as a kid, you know, it was a place that we call home. It was a sanctuary, safe haven, as we say, and definitely appreciate just being there. You know, it gave us a place to go and be off the street and doing something positive. And, you know, a lot of my older homies and older people that I considered influential in my life worked there as well. Okay. So they would oversee us, and then, like big brothers, big sisters. So it felt like a family. It felt good. Right. And as I began to, think about my career and trajectory as far as I wanted to do in my life, I was really heavily involved with math. Like went to school for math, you know, from elementary, graduated with honors, second highest average in my middle school.
Okay.
Math or school related. My high school was Norman Thomas. I went there for accounting. I went to Baruch College, studied accounting there. So I math was just everything. I love numbers, but something always pulled me to work with the youth because I started so young. And I guess got to a point where I said, do I want to sit behind a desk and crunch numbers? Or do I really want to give back to those, much like people did for me?
Right.
And much of my older homies. And, you know, and I had a natural knack for it. You know, I started working at 14. You know, did something called LIT program, Leaders in Training. We got a stipend every 2 weeks, $40.
Okay.
And that was the start, right? And then when I became 16, you know, I was able to get an actual position with the organization, entry-level program aide. From there, I went to group leader. From there, I went to activity specialist. From there, I went to assistant program director, then program director, and now I'm a senior program director. So I definitely know what it is to be at the very, I wouldn't say bottom, because it was, you know, it's just the beginnings of you know, getting myself into the organization and then really saying to myself, I could do something with this. I could really be a big influence and you know, for my community and abroad.
Wow, that's a great story. I didn't know that about you, sir. That's very inspiring. You know what I'm saying? To hear someone, it's a breath of fresh air. Someone so young at such an early age, 14, you know, getting involved in that type of thing. So having done it for so many years, and particularly during the early years, when you were really getting involved, what were some of the struggles or challenges that you faced in it?
I mean, one of the biggest challenges was, you know, being labeled, so sometimes people's perspective or perception of what we do as youth developers, and my program runs on the range of youth and family development. Sometimes people call us like a daycare service or babysitter. So like all you do is play with the kids. Not realizing that beyond just giving families childcare from that 3 to 6 period and beyond, we're doing a lot of social and emotional learning. We are, you know, focusing on STEM related activities, literacy related activities, academic enrichment, also the physical pieces of just a person's growth, so holistically, so it could be conducive for them now and in the future. So we target that as an organization, and it's beyond just, hey, come here for a couple hours and leave. We're really trying to tap in and help out this child and say, how do we help them navigate this world, and along with their families, with everything they have to deal with from at home, from school, and outside of that, just with relationships there. So, you know, that was one of the hardest things. And that's necessarily hard for me, but you always constantly hear that, like, oh yeah, that's not real work, but it's really work that's needed, especially in the urban communities, especially in Rugg during that time, because Rugg during the early 90s was the Wild Wild West. And I mean, this is all documented. You could look it up. It was in the New York Times as far as being one of the worst places in the United States. You know what I'm saying? So it's just one of those things that crack era and everything like that, the drugs, changed things, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, it definitely made it hard for the community. And so having a place like this was great. I would say the other thing that made it difficult, I would say that was probably one of the
biggest ones.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones, but then also myself trying to balance who I was as a child, right? Because during this process of working, I also was becoming a man and coming to who the person I am today. So, you know, sometimes I didn't want to feel like a hypocrite, right? Or trying to balance or trying to do one thing, but then it's like, well, you work with these kids. If you're doing this, how does that look? So that was also a struggle because I also was working, but then I also had a outside life with my friends and family, and sometimes those things didn't always necessarily agree. And it was just like I had to get to a point where how do I do both where they not conflicting each other? How do I be what we consider to be a real one, but not promoting negativity to our youth as far as just being a stand-up individual, but, you know, not saying like, go look for this or look for that. and I'm pretty sure you get the gist of where I'm.
Yeah, we're not gonna put too
going.
much into that, but
but that was a hard thing for me being 17, 18, and still trying to figure out like how much you're gonna be in the streets or what you're gonna do with, like, it can't be both. You can't be running around doing this, that, and the third, but think, and just thinking about that. But
that's that. I think that's such a it's a great point, but it's not something that people really talk about. That struggle, because I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, I've gone through that myself. But you just actually give me an idea for another show.
Yes.
But
that's what we're here for.
You know what I'm saying? Basically, like I mentioned, you're the senior program director of a Cornerstone program in Brooklyn. What exactly is a Cornerstone program?
Yes. So a Cornerstone program is something that was started by the mayor as far as trying to target community centers in the NYCHA facilities for CBOs to come in and run programs there. DYCD, Department of Youth and Community Development, is a very large funder for most and for a large part of just the CBO organizations that's out there in New York City. So DYCD acquired some contracts. My organization, made the RFP, which is a request for proposal, to gain this particular Cornerstone program, and we were awarded it. We have two, one in the Bronx and one in Red Hook. And what's so unique about these Cornerstone programs is that one is in the NYCHA facilities, and one in Rug, we have a really nice facility. Just wanted to add that in there. And then what's really great about it is that during the school summer, we have after school summer camp service. Well, we have summer camp services for elementary from 8 to 6 p.m. All of this is free, by the way. From 6 to 11, 5 days a week, we have service for middle school, high school, and adult. Then on Saturdays, we're open from 3 to 11 at night. And then on Sundays, we also open at 3 to 11 at night. So during the summer, my building's open 7 days a week. Wow. And during these prime hours, and we open so late because these are the hours that the youth, especially high schoolers and middle schoolers, are in the street getting into stuff. Right. So they target that 6 to 11 p.m. time. And see, people say, "Hey, why your child is out so late at the community center?" Well, they might be in the street. At least they somewhere else doing something positive, right? And then during the school year, it changes on the weekend. During the week we open at 10 o'clock, but then on Saturdays we're open from 10 to 5, and then Sundays we're closed. So, but that's the great thing about these Cornerstone programs, that they're open and they service everyone. And that's the type of building you need. You need a place where kids and the youth and adults can go during those hours where crime and other stuff is very, very prevalent.
Right. So, as far as the community centers and working with NYCHA and all the different city agencies, is there a lot of like red tape that you got to deal with?
I think when you're dealing with other organizations in general, I just think there's some things that are barriers, right? And one of those things are communication. So, I do have a great property manager. I'm not going to drop her name because I didn't speak to her about this, but the property manager, and I mean, that's public knowledge as well, but the property manager for East, because my facility is in Red Hook East, is great. We have a great communication. We definitely speak often, but some things are just outside of even her and myself. So with these Cornerstones, is a combination of players. You have the CBO, which is mine. Then you have NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority. Then you also have DYCD, Department of Youth and Community Development. So when certain things need to be fixed, it's like I got to go through NYCHA because it's their actual facility. I'm just running program there, but then there's certain things that DYCD need to fix, or which budget does it come out of, or who does it go to. So sometimes like getting certain things done takes a while to happen, and it may go through a ping pong kind of thing, as far as who it gets sent to and who gets it done. But so that's like probably the hardest thing, and then once again, not to throw NYCHA on the bus, but it's NYCHA. So not saying that's a bad thing, but just saying that, if you lived in the NYCHA facility, how hard it could be at times to get certain things done. And it's not necessarily because they're awful, it's just a lot of residents, a lot of buildings to attend to. As I mentioned, Red Hook is the largest in Brooklyn. So it's at times that things are difficult, but we manage. And, you have to be overstanding of all the people that are involved, because sometimes it's not just relying on one person. It goes up a chain. So I try to be mindful of that.
I hear you. So, let's say I'm a parent.
Yes.
And, I want to bring my kid through to experience your program. What are they going to get?
Wow. So, they're going to get the whole thing. They're going to get a plethora of services, for one. And as I mentioned earlier, what we try to do as an organization is target the participant physically, mentally, emotionally, and cognitively. And that's our holistic approach. So when they come into our program, for example, if it's summer camp, at 8 o'clock, they get in a meal. So they get in a meal, they get in a lunch, they get in supper, they get a snack. Once again, this is all free. Parents do not pay for any of this, right? Then while they're there, at my particular site over the summer, for example, I had a boxing instructor who did boxing for our elementary participants. Also had an organization called Street Soccer, who did soccer programming for our participants, which is great because where I'm at and where I'm from, soccer is not the dominant sport, right? So giving them something different, I wanted to be able to continue to do that. Then we partnered with Pioneer Works on STEM activities, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Then we also at the Sylvia Center do a culinary arts program for our participants, teaching them just about healthy living, which is, I think, once again, that's essential, especially within our communities, and that could be a whole nother segment,
there
right?
You go.
But just the importance of just what goes into your food, how to read these labels, how much is in ounces and grams or whatever the case may be.
Right.
They need to know that, and not for the drug purposes, right? But just for food purposes, how does that relate to them in their lives? And sometimes we don't even look at that. We worry about our health later when it's too late versus just teaching them to get that now. So I try to give them things that's practical, that's tangible, something that's real and that they can feel. And that would make sense. And once again, all of these services are free for the family. So the families are getting one, which is big for families, especially in New York, because both parents have to work, right, to make it. You getting childcare from 8 to 6. Right. And then if your child falls in that middle school range, if we have summer camp services during the day, then they could come also the evening. So you're talking about from 8 to 11 in the summer, your child could be in something productive, be with their friends, learn for free, and you could take care of the things you need to take care of, right? So that's what the parents are getting. They're getting some great stuff.
Sounds great. Is any criteria for the parents?
No. For my program, we do have some criteria. A certain percentage of the participants have to come from a NYCHA facility. Okay. Of course, you want to service the Rel community, but it doesn't have to be from Rel. You just have to be a NYCHA resident. Okay. Then you also have to fall into the certain age range. It's nothing financial about it. So it's not like if I make a certain amount, I won't get service. If I make less amount, it's first come, first serve, with priority to families who have already been in program. Okay. And the reason, and I want to just touch on that, reason why we do it that way is because we are able to track progress. So imagine if I have a program and I have 100 slots, and each year that 100 slots changes, different kids. How do you really track the progression of that individual with your program, right? So we try to retain as many participants as we did the year before and over the summer. So from K to 5, we could say, all right, this was a child that was in public school, charter or private, without after-school services. But this is a child that had after-school services. What was the difference test scores or how they interacted with each other, building relationship, communication, like how much an impact or impactful that program was. So we want to be able to get real numbers and crunch it on it, and we can't get the real numbers if you don't have those kids coming back to program. So we try to retain them as much as we can, and so we can show families that sending your child to after school programming, especially with us, it's worth it.
Wow. So as a senior program director, what are some of the struggles and frustrations you face with that? Because I'm sure there's a lot that comes along with running a program, dealing with the facility, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would say dealing with the facility, even though our facility has been renovated, it's not state of the art. So, you're going to get the leaks. You're going to get the HVAC system not working at times. You're going to get repairs that are needed, right? But then I would say that one of the biggest things that someone will have to deal with, not necessarily of a struggle that I face, but something that people should be aware of that with a lot of our Cornerstone programs, they're located in the central parts of these NYCHA, NYCHA facilities, right? And so with that being said, I'm from Red Hook.
Right.
So some of these families, I know their their parents.
Right.
I might be related to some of these individuals. Some of the parents may have watched me come up as a child. So when you have to mingle with that as a professional and running a facility, but then you're also dealing with people that you know outside of here. Sometimes people want favors, or the expectations is a little different, or and so sometimes those things could get tricky because it's like, oh, let my child get in. And it's like, if I could, I would. Right. But it's now it's like, but you supposed to be my dog, it's kind of hard at times when you have to deal with that because you have a contractual mandate, and if sometimes what families may not realize is that if I bend or break the rule for one, right, I'm gonna have to do it for all.
Everyone, right.
And then on top of that, if something goes wrong, then the whole program shuts down, and then now we don't have a program.
Right.
So I have to think about everyone and not just think about this one family or one relationship. I might have to say a hard no. And maybe even burn the bridge. Hopefully not, in order to provide services for all
the greater good.
Exactly what that is. So just managing those things could be a little tricky at times, but it's been beautiful to be able to come back because I started my career in Red Hook, and after leaving Red Hook, I went to Gowanus, which my father's from, so I was very familiar with there, and then I left and went to East New York for a little bit in Bama projects. Came back to Bed-Stuy to right between Marcy and Tompkins projects, and then I went back to East New York and buy pink houses, and then now I'm back in Red Hook. So I've been all over these wild, crazy areas, as people say, right? But tapping into the community, tapping into where the need is, and I always wanted to come back home to where I was from to be able to take all those things I learned by working in other communities and come back and say, hey, this is a redefined individual, a person that started here, that was great, but now a person that really knows what it needs to be done and now is in a position to really do it.
So that's interesting point that you bring up as far as being in all these crazy neighborhoods and whatnot. And I know recently, I think yesterday or the day before, there was actually an incident in one of the facilities, the city facilities, where a 19-year-old girl got shot and killed. So the reason I bring that up, as you mentioned, some of your facilities are open kind of late. And if I'm a parent and I hear about that type of thing, and I know my kid is in that program, number one, what type of security is there, and do you get is there a lot of negativity floating around?
No, I wouldn't say there's not. If there's any negativity flowing around, it hasn't passed my ears, and I'll be quite honest about that. I think the community knows it's needed. Like I said, for our NYCHA facility, it sits different from a lot of other NYCHA facilities in New York City because we have like a separate space, and we're not underneath building how a lot of those community centers are. We have our own space. Like I said, the facility is a very, very nice facility. So we don't really face that. But in the matter of safety, something that happens over the summer and school year, but very, very heavily over the summer, is that we have NCOs, which are neighborhood community officers, that are placed in all of these cornerstone areas that have programming over the summer at night, just to, one, build a relationship with the community, because that's a big thing, especially in these NYCHA housing residents, right? Residencies, is that a lot of the people that live there don't have the best relationship with our NYPD. So that was a way of trying to bridge the gap. And also myself, these officers are great. They come in, they build relationships with myself, and I do a lot of community work with them. And also trying to give them also an angle to say, hey, this is why the community feels this way, so they could get a perspective from me, then I could get a perspective from them, and then also be like that middle ground to say, hey, look, families, this is what we're facing here. But they're placed there to keep that safety there. So, to build the relationships and but then also the safety piece. So, for the most part, families feel very safe. I know for us, we have trained staff that are trained to assess situations and then deal with them accordingly as far as behavior management and conflict resolution. So since I've been in that particular role, I've been there since March, I could say there's probably been one incident since I've been there as far as our night services where something got out of hand on a physical level, and it wasn't even in the facility, but it was with participants that go to the facility.
I see. Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you have licensed clinicians or folks that work there?
Yeah, not at that particular site, but as an agency, we do have that. And when we see services are needed, we refer families. And I recently referred a family that needed some attention, that wanted some, help, and I was able to refer them, and they're going through that process now.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So earlier in the intro, I mentioned some of the accolades that you've received. One in particular that I think is a testament to who you are and the work that you've done. The 40 Under 40 award.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about that, and how does it feel to receive recognition for something that you do that you love, that's so dear to your heart?
I mean, it's humbling. It's definitely a humbling experience, and I would say I'm one of the first people that don't like to get recognition on a large public scale, just because, one, I don't want to feel like it's about me. I just always, and some people say, yo, look, you did that. You should take that in and soak in that, which I do, but sometimes I don't want to feel like, this guy thinks he's the man, right? But, it was a privilege and an honor. And to be quite frank, when I was chosen for that, one, the email came straight to me from this organization, which I wasn't aware of. So I was completely ignoring the emails. Like I don't know. I'm getting spammed right now. I'm like, what's going on? So then I got like a final email. It was like, well, if you don't answer this particular email, we're going to have to think about someone else. And so they had CC'd someone I knew in the agency. So I'm happy they did that, because then I was like, let me call this person. Right. And when I called them, they was like, yeah, you've been selected through the agency. And I'm like, so when was someone going to tell me? I was like, I almost missed my opportunity. But, with this particular organization, they award 40 awards to those who are under 40 that's doing what is said to be outstanding work within the New York City area in the nonprofit sector. So, I was fortunate that the organizations thought about me when this award came around this time, and I was just very grateful and honored, and it was definitely a privilege just to be able to do that.
Name is ringing bells in the nonprofit world, man, to be recognized.
Listen, I'm just out here, man, trying to do the good work. That's all.
So I also mentioned Mr. Knight also goes by Roll the Big Loco. Yeah. He is involved as an artist, a rather dope artist, I might say.
Thank you. Rolly the Big Loco was good.
Have you merged the two sort of sides of yourself? Do you utilize that in some of your programs that you run?
I mean, we definitely have had programming at my particular site where we did just beat making, or we had a program called Rap Right, and it was, the whole idea was to teach children how to lyrically and in a artistry way put their words together, but in a way where they were saying positive raps, and saying positive things, and teaching them how to write lyrics without cursing, and not use curse words. So it was a lot of stuff we did around that. I definitely bring those programs in. I do have staff that are DJs outside of that work, so they bring those talents in. And then even for my own personal music, I rap about a plethora of things, a wide array of things, because I feel like music should come from your experience. But I also make sure I tap into those things. Like, as you know, I have a song that's called "It's Beautiful," and it's dedicated to women of color. And it just travels through speaking about the dark skin, brown skin, and light skin women and the struggles they face, but also that they are beautiful regardless of what people say or think. And, at one point within the last year or so, mind you, I did this record years ago, but within the last year or so, it was like a big thing that was happening, like with black women, women of color. And it was like, as far as just not feeling like they were sexy or beautiful and having to change their look to fit in. And so it was like, I did that song years ago. And then when this happened, I was just like, this was like as if I was speaking into it, into existence. But it's just something I really believed in, and still believe to this day, that they are beautiful and they need to be acknowledged for that, for, just for just being Queens. But yeah,
smooth guy.
that
was Rolly the Loco.
I think my wife would say the same right there.
That was Rolly the Big Loco just talking right there, right now. He goes back and forth.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta, balance.
What are you at this particular point in your career? What are you most proudest of?
I would say just being able to be honorable and be a stand-up individual and what I do. You know what I'm saying? I think, doing it with this line of work, sometimes you could get categorized as like a sellout or, or he think he too good for everybody. Like, and I try to make sure I'm still with the people. I'm still got my hand on the pulse of what's happening. And just always there, just for everyone, whether it's my homies that's in the street still trying to get to it, or my homies that's getting their masters right now, or my homie that's working sanitation or working the city, like whatever. Like I'm there with everyone, and I try to make sure I bring everyone together. And I would say that's the biggest thing, because I could tap into all those worlds. You know what I'm saying? I could sit with the homies on the block and chop it up with them, and no one feels different. Like, oh well, he's doing this with the youth, he can't sit with us, or like because we over here. Nah. And honestly, my homies, I got a lot of love and respect for them, because if something getting crazy, they'll be like, yo, bro, nah, chill. You got too much moves going on there. You know what I mean? So, I respect that for the homies, though. Salute to them for that. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the, I would say, just being able to have that balance. And I would say, just being able to be the keynote speaker, at South Brooklyn Community High School. That was something that kind of just happened. And I thought to myself, like, who would think for me to be the keynote? Like, I've been to colleges where this keynote address, somebody was like a PhD and they did all that. I was I'm like, y'all sure y'all want me? You know what I'm saying? Do y'all know? Like, you know what I'm saying? But even with that, I think that's why they selected me, because of all those things, because it was something real. And I think sometimes we get people in these positions where they don't feel real to us. It's like, no, you grew up over here. You wasn't. It's like, I'm in the post that I'm still there. Everything those graduates went through or are going through or been through, I've been there. So they hearing with the youth, it's always great to hear for someone that looks like them and been through the things they've been through. Because how can you give me any tools if you don't know where I come from or have never been there? You can probably say some powerful things, but as a child, they're gonna look at the message and not the messenger. I mean, they're gonna look at the messenger and not the message. Right. So they're gonna look and say, all right, you saying some dope stuff, but bro, like you ain't
not from here.
You know what I mean? So they're gonna miss the whole jewel you just dropped on them because they're looking at the messenger and not the message. So for me, I come with both. I'm gonna give you that message, but I'm also look at the messenger. Yeah, I'm here. I know anything I've been through. You know what I mean?
What was the message that you gave that day?
So my message was to them was to perform under pressure. That was my thesis of my particular keynote address, was to perform under pressure. So just to give you a quick background about South Brooklyn Community High School, it's a high school for overage, unaccredited. And so a lot of the students that's there struggled and had to go to there for another opportunity. So, and it's a collaboration between my organization and DOE. And it's a great high school for that. And they get that second chance with people counting them out to get to do what they need to do to be set for the future. And so when I thought about them, I thought about that and the struggles they had to go through to get to even that point. And they performed under pressure because it was hard. Like some of those youth aren't academically inclined, may not have the best household situation, may not have the best support, but they're there to get their education. And to do that is hard. Being 17, 18 and trying to get your stuff together, it's not easy. You know, sometimes we look at it like it's just a walk in the park. Nah, going through everything they had to go through, emotionally, physically, is hard. So for them to get to that point, I wanted to let them know that it didn't go unnoticed. So that was the whole thing, to perform under pressure.
Perform under pressure.
Yeah.
It's a jewel to take with y'all tonight.
Yeah, you have to.
Where do you want to take what you do? Like, how far do you envision you could go with it?
Wow, I mean, one thing that I'm not currently in the works, but I was in the works to trying to do, and it's something I am going to continue to do, just when the time is right. I definitely want to be definitely with the community as far as just hands-on, have my hand on the pulse, but I think I could do more work with more advocating for programs like mine. If you know anything about the nonprofit world, we have some public funding and then we have private funding. And as a nonprofit, we don't charge for anything. So, a lot of times, when these budgets come out from the mayor's office, everyone is sitting like, how are we going to get reductions, or what's going to happen, and you never know. And then sometimes you don't get the money you thought you was going to get, but you still have these facilities and programs. So what do you do? And I don't want to see any program close. I don't want to see any program have to go through that, whether it's my organization or any other big CBOs that's out there or small CBOs. So for me, it's like, how do I use my talent, use my expertise, use my experience, because I have done some lobbying at Albany. I've definitely got my hand in with some politicians and councilmen and women. So I'm definitely working those angles, but in the future, being able to say, hey, look, this needs to be something that's top priority, such as education and after-school programs. Like when it comes to that bit, when that budget comes out and we allocating for money, those top two things need to be on the bill, and make sure nothing is being reduced from the funding. If anything more is being put into it. Right. So I definitely want to be able to do that, and then also use my story to say, hey, look, I was that child. I was that child that went to after school, as a kid, and loved it and felt great there. And now I'm a person that's running my own, site. And this is what this money can do. And create those same stories, if not better, and more grandiose ones.
It's a beautiful story that is should be told. About you. I'm glad you mentioned the whole piece about the funding, because I was gonna get into that a little bit, because people hear free, and not understand that the money got to come from somewhere.
It got to come from somewhere.
And when you're dealing with a city agency and budgets and all that good stuff, definitely utilize those programs and whatnot. In
conjunction with that, I will definitely want to make it clear to the audience that parents, you can help. Community, anyone that lives in the communities where you have programs like this, you can help. Like, calling 311, calling your local politicians, like just making those calls and telling people how much, it's important. And something that's happening on a national level is something called Lights on After School, and that's happened, I think, October 24th. And that's on a national level, where all programs that's after school are going to be showcasing the importance of what after school means for them. And I know my particular site, we're going to be doing some things. We're hoping to do a parent-child basketball game, and then also having parents speak to why after school was important for them and their child. And there's just certain things, platforms are like that, where you got to get your voice has to be heard. And sometimes if you're not speaking it, people don't think it's important. So you got to get out there and really use your voice. Your voice is powerful.
A lot of jewels dropped by Mr. Knight here tonight. Roland Knight. That's a fantastic name. Sounds like a movie actor. Once again, I want to thank you for coming and sharing your story. You as well. I think it's one that can inspire somebody. I didn't know that you went to the program yourself as a child. As you said, you're running your own. So that's definitely an inspiring, motivating story. And, as I mentioned earlier, that's why I want to do these type of shows and speak to these types of individuals. As you said, the message and the messenger, and he's comes from where we come from, looks like how we look, and he's done it. So I come into contact with a lot of people who want to get more involved with community-based activities and programs and whatnot. He gave you some information tonight on how to get involved with it. So again, I want to be able to showcase and highlight these types of individuals and the work that they're doing, to make sure that people know what's going on, and you can support. As he said, you know what I'm saying? Do what you can to keep these programs going, because, if they're not around, think about, what the kids and young adults going to be doing, especially nowadays. So, It's definitely appreciated. Please keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you and I have spoken about many different things that we want to do with this show, and all the resources that we have, and your programs and whatnot. So we're definitely gonna make those things happen.
We're definitely gonna have it come to fruition.
You know what I'm saying? Any last words you want to leave with the people?
As you were speaking, I was thinking about it. That you got to get your voice out there, right? The money is gonna come and it's gonna go somewhere. Just make sure it's being allocated to your child's education and services that they need after school. I can't tell you how important that is. When you look at just statistics of the crime rate, of prime times where things are happening in these developments, that 3 to 6 to 9 o'clock range, but more specifically to that 6 to 9 o'clock range, you should see how the numbers look. It's crazy.
Wow.
And that could just be as simple as having your kids have a place somewhere to go.
Right.
Even if the program is not necessarily on top of all the other things that come with, like the academic, social, emotional learning, but just knowing that they're off the street is saving lives.
Right.
Then now when you couple that with the fantastic work that a lot of our CBOs are doing, it's you can't beat that.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's life-saving work. I mean, if you look at the numbers versus, during those times, it's like, where do you want your child? I'd rather them somewhere getting the things they need. So definitely advocate. Can't express it enough to our families, and just continue to support, and it's free. These programs, they are free services. Something that you got to pay for, you can pay a lot of money for, and those are great as well. But if you could find something that's doing those same things but for free, why not support it? I mean, I think 1 and 1 is equals 2.
It's a no-brainer. sounds like it to me.
Yeah.
But once again, thank you, sir, for coming through. I appreciate
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. You know that.
Keep doing all the work that you're doing. It's fantastic. And this is The Conversation. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Can catch me and The Conversation every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, only on madeforkings.com.
Whoop.